Good afternoon and happy Wednesday. If you're watching this right now, it's time for another edition of Unzipped with Sherry, with yours truly, Sherry. That's me. I'm in a really good mood today because I have a really special guest. Her name is Holly. She's an amazing soul. She's an opera singer and she had the surgery a while back. And I can't wait to share her story with you and just start talking. So I really don't want to waste any time. I kind of want to get into it. So, Holly, I think you're ready. If you're ready, Holly, I hope you're ready because we're about to get unzipped. We all have a story on how we got here, right? So, for me, I used to be over 350 pounds until one day I made the single decision that I wanted change. Weight loss surgery has saved my life, and now I am here for you. I want to hear your story.
You know, the one that happened during that before and after picture? It's time to unzip. What's your story?
Hello, beautiful. How are you today?
I am so great. Thank you for having me. I have to say, you are darling, and I'm so excited to be here. So, yay!
You're so cute. Like, I love it. I already love that we're coming off on with such a positive vibe. I had the privilege of already talking to you and hearing a lot about your story. I know that we have a lot to get into, and I feel like this hour is going to go by really, really quickly. So, why don't you tell the folks who are watching at home a little bit about Holly and how we got to the surgery stage?
Oh my gosh, we could be here for days with that. So, a little bit about me. So, I'm Holly Johnson. I am 42 years old. I had the surgery when I was uh, 40, 41. It's been a year. It'll be 2 years in August. So, about 40 and a half, I guess.
So it's almost surgiversary time.
Yes, it's almost surgiversary time.
Okay,
Yeah.
we're going to get into that later too. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm super excited about that. 2 years. I can't believe it's already been 2 years. So I am originally from Washington State, but I currently live in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and it's hot down here. And I think my real story for the surgery happened. It started about 5 years ago. But in reality, as I think you understand and most people do, it's a lifelong journey. It's not something that all of a sudden you wake up one day and you're like, I need to have weight loss surgery. It's something you think about a lot. And so the journey, the active journey started about 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. But it started before then. I had been thinking about it for years prior. But even before then, it comes all the way back down to my childhood. So I was thinking about this question already. And I was thinking about my life. So I grew up in a family of wonderful people, of parents who loved me very much and who were good people. But we had trauma in our family like most people do.
Yeah.
And I had generational trauma that we were dealing with from my parents' side. And then I had my own trauma. I was horribly sexually abused by several different people. None of them, thankfully, were family members or anything like that. And then just the generational trauma that you grew up with. My mother's father committed suicide when she was 5. There was a lot of abuse on the other side of the family. So my parents were breaking chains of abuse and neglect and things. And so they were wonderful people, but it's still, there's a lot of junk you got to go through. So, and then going through my own trauma and my own abuse, I got to this point in my life where I was a success story, right? I'd gone to college. I had a beautiful, the start of a career. I was married. I had children. I was starting a family. And it's like everything just started to fall apart. All of my trauma was weighing on me. And you turn to the one thing that never lets you down. And that is food. Because I was trying to please everybody else. I was trying to do everything for everybody else. And there's the one place you go to. And I had a lot of deep things I needed to work on. So I get to this point where at this point I had 2 children. I had moved from my Washington State, which I miss the green, and came down to Albuquerque where it's desolate. And it is beautiful, but it is desolate. And then I ended up having postpartum depression that never worked out. Like I had a baby, had postpartum, and then I got pregnant really quickly with the second one, and then almost died because I had to have this thing removed out of my body. I mean, just one thing after another. And then I ended up having seasonal depression backwards. So a lot of people think I moved from a sunny place to Washington State, and now it's dark and gloomy. I have seasonal depression. Right. So I actually had it the opposite, where I moved from dark and gloomy, which I loved, and it was too much sun, and it was crazy. And so I found myself one day in my house. I had drawn every single curtain. I had turned up the AC. I had piled on blankets, and I found myself in my living room crying. And I'm like, something needs to change. And I think that was when it really, so I guess that was like 12 years ago, 13 years ago. And my marriage was starting to fail. Everything just was falling apart. And so about 5 years ago, I was in an opera. Like you said, I'm an opera singer. I was in an opera it was so much fun with a local opera company. I just decided to get back into it after having babies. And I had met this woman who was one of my costumers, and she was awesome. She was so great. I met her my first opera, and then a few operas later, so like 3 or 4 years later, I saw her again, and I did not recognize her. And she's like, "You don't recognize me, do you?" And I said, "No, tell me who you are." And so she told me, and I'm like, "What did you do?" And she said, "I had weight loss surgery." And I had thought about it prior to this. And she's like, "Let's chat." So we got back together a different day, and we had a full conversation about weight loss surgery. And she said, she was blunt, and I loved her. She's like, "This could really help you." And she's like, "Have you ever thought about it?" And I said, "Yes, I have." So we talked more. And then about a year later, I was hit with the diagnosis of pre-diabetic. And that was it. That was the linchpin of it's time. Because if I don't change my life now, I will not see my babies grow up to be adults. I will not be a grandma. And I've been waiting too long. And so that was the moment where I said enough is enough. But it didn't actually happen. I started the process and I went into the process that year, and I had a really interesting conversation with a friend and who had just had the surgery. And she just had the surgery, and she looked at me and said, "You're too skinny to have weight loss surgery." Yeah. "You're too skinny to have weight loss surgery. And do you run marathons?" I said, "No, I don't run marathons." She's like, "Well, then you're not going to be fit enough, so you can't have weight loss surgery. You won't succeed." And so I actually stopped. I stopped the process. And then I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was another kick in the pants. And then I took like 6 months off, and then I started again. And I am so grateful I did. And that's where it went. So that's really the beginning of the weight loss journey.
Oh my God. Number one, that was an incredible story. Number two, I was not prepared for part of your story because we had not talked about that ahead of time. So you kind of just this blind side at me, but like I really resonated with it because I think a lot of times when it comes to obesity, when you start peeling back the onions, you kind of find that there's some kind of a trauma or some kind of a trigger that happened. I am not immune to it either. I had something traumatic happen to me at a younger age too. And I feel like you're so worried about people knowing about it or judging that I feel like you hold all of your emotions in, and maybe you're not the same way, but for me, you hold all of these emotions in, you put on the brave face, you pretend like everything's fine. And I feel like the more that you're doing that, the more that you're just shoving, metaphorically, you're just carrying all of this weight onto you. And then, like you said, food is not going to hurt your feelings. Food's not going to call you fat. Food's not going to cause a bad day. It's just, you just kind of put all of your effort into this thing that this is an immediate release, an immediate relief. And just like we had talked about last week with the bariatric psychologist, Kelly, there's certain foods that trigger certain hormonal chemicals in our body. So we kind of start craving this negative attention that we're getting because it's like this instant quick fix. But yeah, first and foremost, I am sorry that you had to deal with that.
Oh, thank you. It's okay.
I mean, obviously, I didn't cause it or anything like that. But, it takes a really strong person to be vocal about it and to talk about it. I also think to people who've had some kind of trauma or issues in their past and you happen to have weight loss surgery, these are demons that might come up at a later time. So, one thing that we always talk about within ourselves is the fact that in the bariatric community, mental health is not talked enough about. And there's a lot of changes that go through your body, and a lot of it has to do with the person that you used to be and how you used to deal with stress and issues, that if you don't take the time to really delve in and rectify it, you're just going to keep self-sabotaging down the road. So number one, I'm smurfing proud of you for overcoming this and being where you are now. Um,
Thank
so
you.
yeah, like, was not prepared for that, but I'm so glad that you shared it.
Well, you know, I apologize. When our first conversation, I didn't like you. When you have your first conversation, you talk about it, and then you leave, and you have time to think.
Yeah,
You're like, wait a second, let me put some of these back into perspective, because
right.
you do have to do a lot of work, and you are so right. The amount of mental health work you have to do, whether you've had a trauma in your past and that plays a part of your obesity or not,
Yeah.
that you have to do the work. If you don't, you are not doing the full journey. You have to do the full journey.
100%. And this doesn't even apply to necessarily people who've had the surgery, any kind of trauma or issues or stress that you've had in your life. We have two options in life. We can either stew on it, be angry, hate the past, and not do anything about it, and use that as a crutch to ever propel yourself forward. Or option B, you can recognize that in those moments in our past, we had no control over the situation.
Right.
However, today we have the sole control to decide how we're going to let it affect us and how we're going to move forward from it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've said this to so many people when we talk about weight loss, and I'm jumping to the end of all of this of saying, because you ask, what is something you would tell somebody else who's thinking about this? And
Mm-hmm.
the thing I say all the time is, you are worth this. You are worth this journey. And it's not, like you said, it's not just the weight loss journey, but it is the journey of life. And
Mm-hmm.
it is surviving and thriving in the journey of life. And you are worth it every step.
100%.
Yeah.
And if you people who've had this surgery, the mindset that you have going into it and overcoming the little obstacles that you face are going to help shape the person you're going to be when you come out of it. And yeah, like, that is just incredible. So when you finally made the decision to have the surgery, did you want to tell anybody about it, or did you you're like, I'm just keeping this to myself?
Great question. So I was one of the ones who didn't want to tell anybody about it. So I am actually very much an open book. Like I said, you can ask me anything, and I will give you an honest answer. But for whatever reason, I was not ready to tell people about this during the process.
Right. Okay.
After surgery, that was a totally different story. And I told this to my husband and my friends who I did tell, that I reserve the right to change my mind later
Mhm.
on who I tell. So I did tell a couple people. I was kind of testing the waters. Do I tell people or do I not? And so I told a couple people, and I got some bad reactions. And I thought, I'm just going to keep this to myself. So I
Yeah.
had one friend of mine. I told her, and I thought she'd be very supportive, and she actually is. But she called me like a few days after I told her, and she begged me not to go through with it. Please don't do this. This could kill you. It probably will kill you. It killed my uncle and this and that. And I said, wait, let's have a conversation. And in the end, what killed her uncle was not weight loss surgery at all. It was, he drank himself to death after weight loss surgery. And so it was actually very healing for her. But then I told another friend, and this was when I was done telling people, and she said, why can't you just be happy being the healthy fat girl? And I said, because I'm not healthy, and I don't want to be the healthy fat girl. I want to be a healthy Holly, and I don't want to be defined by my weight.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's so funny. Like, why are these people not as vocal and concerned about our health when we're at our worst? But the minute we want to make a change or try to do something about it, everybody comes out of the woodwork and has an opinion. Like they just got their medical degrees overnight. Like I remember before I even thought of even trying the gastric sleeve, back then the lap band was really popular. And I remember posting on Facebook or something like that, like, hey, I'm thinking about doing the lap band. Like, what do you think? Huge mistake, because everybody and their brother came out of the woodwork like, don't do it. So and so that I know's brother, sister's cousin died from that, or they gained it all back. All of these opinions. So when I finally made the decision to really seriously think about the sleeve or bypass, I didn't know at the time. I think I told 4 or 5 people. Told my husband, told my mom, and I told 2 or 3 of my closest friends that knew me better than anyone, that knew that this is not something that I would just take lightly. And my 5 core people said, I think this is a good option for you and we will support you 100%. And so I didn't post anything on Facebook. I didn't tell anybody until the night before surgery. I made it, well, first, it's very dark, but I made a video to my husband in the event I didn't make it out of the surgery the next morning because I'd never had surgery before. And then 2, I wrote a blog post and I said, I'm in 12, I think it was like in 12 hours, my life is about to change. And I went through why I decided to have the surgery and what I was feeling in that moment. And I posted it like at midnight because I knew everyone was going to be sleeping. And by the time that they read it, I'd already be in the surgery. So like there would be no like last minute calls or text messages or anything. So, and then from once I made that decision, I was totally vocal about it. It was because I was traumatized by that stupid Facebook post that I didn't want people to try, because you're already nervous. You're scared that this is a very major surgery. I didn't want anyone to talk me out of it because by now I'd made up my mind.
Well, I think I think you are more common than you think. And I think there are more of us who wait until after to talk about it. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. Whatever you choose is best for you, I think is exactly best for you. And that's what you should do. And I was very much the same, where I didn't want people to talk me out of it, because there's a lot that goes into this decision. Because this isn't a magic bullet. This isn't a light switch you can flick and everything gets better. And it is not reversible. You cannot come back from this at all. And so it's something that it is your decision to make, and yours alone. And yes, you have family who's there for you and friends who were so instrumental in this for me. And but in the end, it's my decision. And so I have to reconcile a lot of things in my life and in my brain and in my heart. And if I can't do that on my own, then I don't need other people telling me what I should and shouldn't do, because they have to reconcile it for them as well.
Right.
I only need to reconcile it for myself, not for anybody else.
And I preach all the time that this is your story to tell. Our life, we hold the pen, we write the pages, we determine which characters are going to come and go throughout the story, and we decide what pages are going to be written when we want to write them. It's up to us. Like, you can have an opinion, but at the end of the day, like, you're not walking a mile in my shoes and you're not living my life. You're not paying my bills. You're not doing anything for me. This is my decision. And if you don't agree with it, I respect that. I will listen to your concerns because you genuinely care. But at the end of the day, whatever you're telling me, just trust. I've already had these thoughts about myself before. I don't need you to like throw them at me. So for me to have reconciled it and rectified it to this point, I've come to terms with whatever the outcome may be from this.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And one thing that was really interesting about your story was, and we haven't talked about it on our shows before, is people who might have any kind of a religious background. I'm curious to know if there's if there's any stigmas that are related to like this, because it's kind of like a version of like body modification or like, a weight loss surgery. Did you have to deal with anything like that?
Yeah, I really did. I am part of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. That is the name, but most people call us Mormons, and most of us are fine with that. So there are some stigmas even within our church, and I was trying to think about how exactly to describe this. When you have a church faith, a community that is a very involved, very active, community and faith, where, I mean, this is something I live every day. It's not just
Yeah.
a Sunday thing. There are some things you have to resolve. So one of the things that is with my faith is, what did I write down? Let me look at my notes for a second.
You're fine.
So I, um, this is a, there are two things that I came down with. The one is this. The first one is this, is that our bodies are one of the most holy things, the holy places that we can have, period. There is no building that is more holy than our body. We believe, right, that we have this spirit that enters our body and we live in this holy place. And so
Right.
we need to protect it and keep it holy as best we can. And so the second thing with that is, there is this misconception, I think, then it's not just with my church, I think it's with so many others, that we have to be perfect to be forgiven by God.
Right.
And it's hilarious because that's the whole reason why we have Christ and why we are forgiven, is because we are imperfect.
Right.
And so it's like this weird, you have to be perfect and you have to really protect that body of yours. And if not, then you're not perfect and you're going to go to hell.
Well, and this is my biggest question, because we constantly judge ourselves all the times. Like, we have this perception of perfection.
Right.
And my question is, what is perfect? Who determines? Is it man that determines what is perfect? Like, man is flawed. We are all flawed. So who decides what's perfect, and at what level do we hold ourselves to this status that nobody can truly define? Because every single, not even just humans, every single living, breathing thing is 100% different from each other. So what are we comparing to? Like, I never understood the concept that we have this desire to be perfect,
Right.
because our versions of perfect are going to be different.
Well, I think when we look at what perfect is, I think we look at it from a very worldly point of view, right? You have to have a certain body. You have to be able to say everything that's correct. You can't do anything that's wrong. So therefore, you're doing everything that's right. You always have to be kind to others. I mean, we use Christ as our example, but I think we skew that in our heads. And so when we look at what perfection is, number one, it's not something we can gain in this life. We can be perfect at things, but we will never be a perfect being here, which is, again, when you go into the theology of religion, it always comes down to needing a Christ, needing a savior. And so he's the one who's going to make us perfect. And if we can remember that, then it's so freeing to say, it's okay that I'm imperfect. Like, I'm just going to let that go. And that's actually when I think you become closer to perfection, is when you let that go and let go and let God, right? Let him help you in whatever. And so in my opinion, from my own studies and even from what my religion tells me, perfection is just truly doing your best to be a good person.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. Like, it's doing your best to be a good person and changing when you need to change to become a better human being and just a good person. And that takes off so much stress. And so I'm going to jump to this. I ended up on antidepressants to deal with my postpartum depression.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a therapist who said to me, she said, if you were diabetic, so funny that this happens actually, if you were diabetic, would you take insulin? I said, well, of course I would. It's like, if you have the flu, would you take medication to do that? If you had cancer, would you take medication to take care of that? And I said, of course I would. She said, so why is your mental health any different? That you wouldn't want to help you? You wouldn't want to take that? And it changed the way I looked. Like, I never was against it, but it changed the way I accepted it. So when I got to this point in my journey with weight loss surgery, her question popped into my head again. If you had cancer, would you take care of it? And I said, of course I would. So if you need help with weight loss surgery, why aren't you doing it? And it was, oh, well, duh. I mean, this is not about being thin. This is not about being a supermodel. This is truly about my health and about being a better version of me. And then I took it to God and I prayed about it. And his answer was like, let's do this. And I loved it. I mean, that's how he speaks to me. He's like, let's go. And we went and we did it.
And I love that. And like we talk about it all the time. The biggest misconception about this surgery is we cheated or we took the easy way out. And my favorite thing now is to kind of use those examples. Is if you find out that your sugar is really high, and now you're diabetic, is it cheating to take insulin? Why are you not just telling your brain, hey, lower my sugar levels? Why are you just not eating stuff that's going to magically lower your levels on its own? Or people, who go to the gym. Is going to the gym cheating? Is using the leg press machine cheating? Because why can't you just go and do some squats and get the same results? I said this medication or this machine, it's a tool.
Yeah.
It just sitting there, it's not going to give you the results you want. But if you utilize it correctly, you are consistent with it, you know how to properly use it and do the right form, you're going to get the results that you want. And so I tell people this surgery is the same thing. This surgery is not going to magically cure you. It might seem that way because for 6 months you might drop a ton of weight.
Right.
But if you weren't using that tool properly, you're going to be one of those people that gain it all back or have complications or have more issues down the road. It's just a tool to get you down the road. No different than insulin or a gym equipment or going to a therapist or seeking any kind of outside help to better yourself.
Yeah. I completely 100% agree with you. 100%.
Yeah. So to all you haters out there, smurf you because it ain't cheating. That's all I got to say.
Oh my gosh. I think the thing that you don't understand this until you actually go through it. You can understand to an extent. It's kind of like anything that is big, right? So you don't understand until you go through it, but this is so hard. There are times, I will say there are times that I'm like, wow, this portion of it is easier than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
But it might be easier for me than I thought it would be, but it could be harder for somebody else. But this is a lifelong thing. You don't do this for a year, drop all the weight, and you go back to normal. You can't, or something is not going to go well. Yeah, it's a lifelong thing, and that's actually one of the things that I decided was I knew I needed help. I knew I needed to change a lot of things, and I thought I just need a tool. I need help, and this was the tool I chose.
I absolutely love that. And this is kind of off topic, but one of the things that we always struggle with when we're overweight is just finding normal clothes to wear in everyday life. Now, what I thought was interesting about you is I'm 5'7". So compared to the average woman, I'm on the taller side. And then I met you and you were like 5'11". And I knew that I had trouble trying to find clothes because it might fit around my giant belly. But then I kind of have like the flood waters or the high waters or whatever kind of look down below because it would be too short. Did that add an extra element to
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. So it's really weird. So 5'11" is tall and it's very
Yeah.
tall for a woman, but it is not extremely tall. So if I were to purchase normal clothes, regular clothes, they are always high waters. They are always up to here on my wrists. Things never fit across the bust line. I always have gaps, anything that was button up, belly wise. And I'm not long waisted, actually. I'm actually very proportional, which is very strange for my height. So I'm not long waisted, but they would still ride really short. So it's strange. So if I were to purchase anything that's specifically for people who are tall, it's anybody 6 feet or over. So then everything was too long, was coming to here,
Right.
or it would drag. And I'm like, now I feel like I'm 5'5". I feel like my mother, poor her, like seriously, she's 5'5" and has to have things that are hemmed. And so there's nothing for the people who are between like 5'9", 5'10", and 5'11", 5'12". There just is nothing. And then on top of it, the way I carry my weight, I have really skinny legs. Really skinny legs. I always thought I was like an Oompa Loompa or Tweedledee and Tweedledum. That's how I always kind of felt.
Oh my God, what a hell of a visual, though. Oh my God.
But I have like this big belly and these skinny legs. And I would go to Lane Bryant, bless their hearts for having things that are cute for larger sizes. But everything, like, you have to have a booty, you have to have thick legs, you have to have thick arms, and I carried everything in my belly. And so I would look like a box. It was always so frustrating. I always wore pieces, I always modified things, and then
Yeah.
I just dealt with the fact nothing was long enough. And it was sad. Like, it was
It was really
when
sad.
it's very sad.
But please tell me that there's light at the end of the tunnel.
There is absolutely light at the end of the tunnel. So I have to say that body shapers now are so much better than they used to be, which are great. I do wear some of those, especially with dresses. I never ever wore dresses until I lost the weight. It was always two pieces, top and a skirt. And now I'm obsessed with dresses. I literally have 3 dresses coming to me today from
Really?
Amazon. Yes,
I
I'm
love
like,
because
I'm crazy.
I'm a self-proclaimed tomboy. I grew up with only guys. I was jeans and t-shirts and
Oh,
baseball hats all the time. And then like when you get into high school and then like, you want to go to a dance. Well, I mean like nobody asked me to go to a dance, but it got to an age where I wanted to be feminine, but there was nothing out there for me. If it fit around my chest, it didn't fit anywhere else. If it fit around my waist, it didn't fit me on top. And I couldn't find anything to wear. So the idea of I don't know. I just associated wearing a dress was being feminine and graceful and sexy. And I was like, I'm none of these things. I am a dork. I'm one of the guys. And like this, there's no way I can exude that in a dress. So I just never attempted it. And now that I'm starting to kind of play with it and I started taking dancing and I'm like, oh, this dress looks really nice. Like, oh, I'm like getting to the point where I kind of want to buy more.
okay, Amazon, I'm telling you, because you can send them back.
I love that too. That's so
Yeah.
true.
Yeah. So yeah, there is a huge light at the end of the tunnel. I think I mean, growing up in the 90s, I graduated in 98. So my high school years were in the 90s.
Me
Um,
too.
the um the styles back then were grunge. I mean, I grew up in near Portland, Oregon. I mean, we were the
Oh
grunge
my
scene.
yeah.
So I mean, I wore men's everything and
Like
we
the
were
plaid shirts.
oh, I lived in
Oh yeah.
plaid shirts with t-shirts and jeans and I mean baseball caps or beanies or whatever. It was fabulous. And it was great because I grew up somewhere cold, so I could wear it all the time. But now like we girls today are they're luckier because we have places like Maurice's who has the cutest stuff on both ends of the spectrum. I mean, you just have more options everywhere you go and cheaper options. They have the cutest stuff at Walmart that you can just buy. Like I have a pair of shorts on from them right now, and they're darling, just cute jean shorts. So it's nice. It's very different today than it was back then. But as you get smaller, the sizes change
Yes.
and just the way they fit. And it is really quite nice. It's nice.
It's so true. And I remember, first of all, class of 99. Hello. But back then, we had Lane Bryant, and that was it.
Yep.
Even if you had a Target and a wall, I don't remember Kohl's in the 90s at all.
Mm-mm.
Maybe I just didn't have one near me. Um, that was my only option to buy clothes. And back then in the 90s, sorry Lane Bryant, but the designs were made for women in their 50s. Like there was all these older women styles and you're like 16 years old and like you all these girls are wearing like these cute little outfits from Justified or what like Charlotte Russe I remember was this big store and I'm
Mhm.
like I want to shop there, but they go to like size
10,
12 or
maybe.
10.
Yeah.
Then I remember at some point, it was either late 90s, early 2000s, they started coming out with a couple little novelty plus size stores. And I do plus size because they promoted that they went up to 3X. And I'm like, oh my God, I can finally wear cute stuff. But you put on this 3X and it's China 3X.
Oh,
So it's probably like, I
a
still
medium.
like boobs around it and I'm like how now you're feeling even worse because we put a value around these numbers size 16 size 26 whatever so now I'm putting on a 3X shirt and it's not fitting and you're like how is this freaking possible. So I agree, I love that now, especially by the time I had the surgery in 2014, Kohl's was big then. And Kohl's did go up to like size 24, size 26. So I could find at least something that I could wear in public. But yeah, we didn't have any of that crap back then. It
Mm-mm.
sucked.
It was awful. It was really sad. They're getting it. I think more places are getting it, which is nice.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, and I think a lot of it has to do too is that there is such a pandemic that comes with obesity, and more people are dealing with obesity that they finally just kind of had to catch up with it, which sucks because that means that more and more people are struggling every year. That now the industry had to catch up to make money off of them by selling them clothes,
Right.
which it is what it is. But what was also interesting about your story too is you had the surgery in 2020. I had to look at the date real quick, but
Yeah.
in the height of the pandemic.
Mhm.
And if I remember correctly, you made the decision, I'm going to go through with this. You're mentally preparing yourself, you're getting your psych evals and your nutrition appointments. And then what
Canceled.
happens? Yes.
So it was crazy. My original date was April 6th of
20.
2020. I had to think about this too.
I got
April
you.
2020. And we had just come out of spring break at the end of March.
Mhm.
And so here in New Mexico, it happened. We were coming out of spring break and they decided to cancel school the first day back. And then we shut down like the next day or 2 days later, or they just kept everybody out. And then we shut down fully 2 weeks after that. So it shut down 9 days prior to my surgery date. And I saw it coming, right? We all saw it coming as it swept across the country. And my husband was actually on a work trip when there was this warning of start getting toilet paper type of thing. And I was talking to my husband and he was like, no, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. I'm like, no, I really don't think it will be. I think I need to start making masks and I think I need to go and get some supplies. He's like, well, do whatever you feel like you should do. And he didn't make it home in time before we were shut down. And so I was really glad I followed those promptings to do it. But I called, like, as soon as I knew things were going, I called and I said, what's going on? And they said, we don't know, stay posted. And then I called again, like the next day, what's going on? We don't know, stay posted. And then you get it in the news, everything's shutting down and everything's going. And I called, and they're like, we'll let you know. And then I got the call the next day saying surgery's been canceled. But the thing about it too was I was in a bit of a different situation. So I had the endoscopy where they had to scope you. I
Mhm.
found out that not every surgeon does that, where they
Really?
scope you down. Yeah.
I didn't do that.
I think everybody should do that. Actually, a girl in one of the groups that I was on Facebook, they did not do that. They got into surgery, found a massive tumor in her stomach, and she had she was completely cut wide open on everything, and they pulled her out, and then she went into cancer treatment because it was crazy. I'm like, why didn't they do an
I
endoscopy?
literally put my little hairs up on my arms. That is insane.
It was crazy. It was a full year or more before she was able to finally have surgery and whatnot. Like we've been all watching her, just praying for her. But yeah, so luckily my doctor did the endoscopy, and so in your stomach kind of looks like this, right? And it's got your esophagus that goes up, down. So right where it meets right here, so before it goes up into your esophagus, so right here at this like connection, there was a polyp that was probably the size of somewhere between a nickel and a quarter. And it was in between the lining of my stomach. So you have three parts of your stomach. You have the lining on the inside, then your stomach, and then a lining on the outside. And it was in between the inside liner and the stomach itself. So it was somewhere in between. And it was right in this place that you would never have seen it unless you took the camera and turned back up around and looked backwards. And it was exactly where, so when I had the sleeve, it was exactly where the sutures would have been to cut the stomach in half.
Okay.
So he was very nervous because you can't suture onto that. You have to either cut around it, and they wanted to cut it out to make sure that, if there was anything serious. So he needed it mapped. So I had to go see a specialist who did very specific things and had to have another endoscopy as well as an ultrasound to map exactly how big it was, exactly where it was, so they could go around it. And so it was actually 2 days prior to that endoscopy that everything was canceled. So it was supposed to be that. And then 7 days later, I was going to go in for the sleeve. And so everything shut down. And they're like, no worries. When things come back up, you'll be able to go do whatever. But then I come to find out there was one specialist in New Mexico who could do it, just only one. And luckily he took my insurance. And he decided to retire. And I'm like, wait, what? He's like, he's going to retire. And he had, I think, 2 weeks of patients. And I was not on that list. And so I had to call. The amount of phone calls. So I'm jumping backwards or to the end. But the amount of phone calls I had to do, I eventually had to get my surgeon. I called my surgeon and said, if I don't get into him, then I can't have surgery. So can you call him? And the guy, so my surgeon called this gentleman, this doctor, and said she needs to get in or she can't have this other surgery. He did my procedure on his lunch break because there were no spots left. So, I mean, it was the amount, like I said, the amount of phone calling I had to do.
Yeah. Oh my God.
So to get to where you wanted to go, going backwards of where was I mentally? I think it was this moment of holy crap. And that's where I stopped.
Like, where do you go from holy crap? Like,
there just isn't. Like, you go,
like,
you just like, crap.
like the world is shut down. Surgeries are getting canceled. Like every single day. Like we had no clue what tomorrow was going to be like.
Yeah.
Then, and I don't know if you remember, so you're having your surgery canceled. Like this life-altering thing's canceled. The world's shutting down. We can't get toilet paper anymore. Now there's freaking murder hornets that we have to worry about. There's all of these things that kept getting thrown at us. And you're like, all I wanted was to not have diabetes. All I wanted was just walk without keeling over. And now there's murder hornets.
I'm like being attacked everywhere. And then I have 2 kids. So then now we have school at home and I love my husband, but now he's working from home. And I'm like,
oh my God, yeah.
Like everybody's now invading my space. I had all of these plans. I had all of this stuff. And it was so funny when we needed to go, like we were legitimately out of toilet when we had to go buy toilet and everybody was doing this rush. And I'm like, I just need like 6 rolls. That's it. Like I legitimately don't have any in my house. And it was crazy. So I got to this holy crap and I just looked at everything and honestly, it was what's my priority? And my priority were my kids. And it was, what do I need to do for my kids? Everything else will happen. And I mean, I truly had put so much prayer into this. And I was to this point where I knew I was doing the right thing. I knew all of this was in the right direction and it's going to happen. And I just had to wait. And I knew that if I got upset, it wasn't going to do me any good. I know that there were people who were like, well, now I'm just going to go eat and I'm going to show them. It's like, why? I was already in my journey. So my journey was just being stalled. And that's how I approached it was I'm just now stalled and that's it.
Yeah. And especially with the surgery and even with the pandemic, like, it humbles you very, very quickly. And you learn to appreciate the smallest things that you didn't think possible. It's a quick little tangent, but when we were out of toilet paper everywhere, we would just grab whatever we had access to. Yeah. Like whether it was like a single ply, a half a ply, like whatever, we just grabbed whatever we can get just out of desperation. And when we moved last year, my husband and I think I'd found like some old toilet paper. So I started putting it in all the bathrooms and my sister-in-law came to visit and she's like, Sherry, what is this shit? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And she goes, you can't afford toilet paper? And I'm like, oh my God. I was like, it must've been from like the old like ration stash or whatever that we had. So the next time she came to visit, she brings us this giant thing of like the really good toilet paper. I'm like, either you're giving me a hint that you think I can't afford this. I said, but for me, like when you've been back then and you just used whatever you could, you were just grateful to have it. Like to this, I don't care anymore. Like obviously it's nice to appreciate the nicer things, but I'm like, dude, like I'm not broke. I can afford toilet paper now. Like it's just crazy how much we take for granted on a damn time if you don't have access to it. I can't believe this, but we only have like 15 minutes left.
I know.
Like, looking at clock going, no, we just started. So one thing I wanted you to talk about was the issue that you had when you woke up from surgery. Like you've had the surgery, and all I have, I know the story, but my note just says in quotes, the bitch nurse.
I love that. When you wrote, like, you should see my notes. I loved them. I laughed so hard. Okay, so this was not my first surgery. Like I said, I ended up having to have this massive thing removed, and I've been cut hip to hip. So this was not the biggest surgery I've had, and it was definitely not my first. So, so I woke up from surgery without my pain bridged at all. No, no bridge. I woke up in full pain, like somebody was stabbing me all over my stomach. And when you wake up to that much pain, you have no control over your reaction. And I'm pretty positive I screamed. No, I know I screamed.
Yeah.
And I remember myself saying, it hurts so much. It hurts. I can't, why won't this stop hurting? It hurts. It hurts. And at first they were like, it's okay, start pressing your button. Like I couldn't even open my eyes at that point. Like I was not even fully functional to even open my eyes. And I had the button, and I knew, because I had surgery before, and I'm like pushing this button as much as I possibly can. And she's like, sweetheart, at first she was nice, sweetheart, you can only push it once, and in another 15 minutes you can push it again. And I'm like, but it hurts. And she's like, I know it hurts. It'll go away, this and that. And then you just do not have control. And so I'm like, it hurts so much. It hurts so much. And she got right into my face and she yelled at me, you need to be quiet. You are scaring the other people, the other patients, and they cannot be scared. So you need to be quiet. And like, I get that she needed to be in my face, but at the same time, why in the world didn't anybody bridge my pain? And I thought, you should all be scared, because no one should be going through this. And like everybody left after that, and they just left me there in pain. And I'm just like smashing this button of when can I get my next hit, because there was no pain medication. And I was ticked. I ended up calling and filing a lot of reports, and I'm pretty sure I got somebody fired.
I hope so. Because if not, I get that it's been almost 2 years, but I will write a memo. I will write some letters on your behalf. Like, heads need to freaking roll, because that is 100% unacceptable. And I'm sorry that my yelling in excruciating pain is inconvenient from you watching your TikTok videos or whatever you're doing right now, where you can't get me the help that I need.
Right.
So,
yeah, there was no reason. I mean, and I have been through so many medical things. I don't know if they could have just put me right under again and bridged it then, or done something, but there should have been something later. Yeah.
That is just utterly insane.
And knowing full well, having woken up from a bigger surgery and never having felt that pain, I knew something was seriously wrong.
Yeah. That's insane. So, I mean, obviously, aside from that, because that's a pretty traumatic experience. So we already know that this is going to be part of my next question. But aside from that, knowing everything that you know now, the journey, the ups, the downs, everything that you've been through with this surgery, if you did it all over again tomorrow, what, if anything, would you do differently?
Well, I will first say that I would absolutely do it again. Knowing full well that I was going to wake up without a bridge, with that pain, I would do this again. Full stop. No, absolutely, without question. The only thing that I would do differently is, I wrote this down. This is what I tell everybody: know your insurance yourself from the very beginning. Know it yourself. I could have had this done before the pandemic, because if I would have taken charge of my insurance, there was a moment in time where I just figured that my doctor's office knew what they were doing, or surgeon's office knew what they were doing, and they did not. There was a time where I sat with the financial person, and it was me, him, my husband, and his supervisor, and we called my insurance together and said, what do I need to do? What are the requirements? And she told them just flat out what it was. And we got off the phone, and he said, she doesn't know what she's talking about. I'm like, policy in hand, let me read it to you. She doesn't know what she's talking about. So from the very beginning, know what your insurance is yourself. So there are no loopholes. There are no weird things happening. I could have
Right.
done it 6 months prior. I didn't have to do the full year thing. I could have just gone in and done it. No problem. So that is a big one. I would have done it. I would have done that. Other than that, I really don't think I would do anything differently. I mean, I worked my butt off for this. I went and got a therapist as soon as I decided to do it. She walked with me hand in hand. I don't think I would do anything different. Because I worked so hard for it. Just
Right.
work. Yeah. Let me
I
think.
absolutely love that. And when we had Kelly, the psychologist, on last week, we talk about when you're one of the requirements for most of us to have the surgeries, you have to have a psychological eval. And
Mm,
my thing is, you want me to sit in front of a complete stranger who knows nothing about me, who's going to have me figured out in an hour and is going to determine whether or not I can have surgery. But that's it. Well, you're on your own after that. Like they don't prepare you for the emotional strain that this causes. They don't prepare you for how it might affect relationships, how you're going to view yourself, body dysmorphia. Like there's this whole plethora of things that they don't prepare you for. And how many relationships have been hindered because of the surgery? Not because the surgery caused it, but because the surgery and how it changes you, like it can have issues in relationships, how you are with yourself, how you are at your job. There's so many different elements. So one of the things that I recommend is, if you don't know yet how to figure out what those triggers were for you to turn to food, or what caused the emotional eating that you were doing, go out there and ask for help,
yep.
because those problems don't go away when you have the surgery. They tell us that there's the hormone, the craving hormone is removed during the surgeries. So people hear that and they go, I'm never going to be hungry again. And then 4 months later, they're posting all over the message boards, why am I hungry? My sleeve is broken. Like, please help me. And you're like, we need to do a better job of educating. Like, no, you're not going to not be hungry ever again. Like, you're going to be hungry, but this is what happens. Or when you're stressed, when you had a bad day, when you have cramps and you're going for the chocolate, there's other things we can do. And you're not going to know about those options until you go and get some
Yep.
kind of a help and rectify your past, so that you can be much better in the future.
Yeah. Because that was one of your questions, is what advice would you give? The advice is, get a therapist or a life coach. A therapist or a life coach. It doesn't have to be, it could be both. It could be one or the other, depending on what your needs are. But get one immediately, and have somebody to walk through that with you. Absolutely.
100%. Well, I know that this whole show is based off of bariatric surgery but I need to ask you questions because you're an opera singer, and that is like so amazing. I am like literally so jelly. I told my husband last night, I've been trying to write these little parodies for bariatrics, and I'm trying to record on GarageBand, and I'm like, my voice is terrible. Like, I am not a singer. I can't sing. So when I come across somebody, like, I always wanted to be an opera singer, I used to be a first soprano in high school
Amazing.
20 some odd years ago. I don't have that anymore. So I just want to know, one question I have, and we'll make it surgery related,
Sure.
is, does your voice change before and after surgery when you lost all of this weight?
That's a great question. So that was one of the big concerns, actually, I took into consideration, is it's with weight loss. Does your voice change with weight
Mhm.
loss? And yes, it does, but not necessarily how people think. Sometimes your range can get a little bit bigger. Sometimes it can get a little bit shorter. Mine got, like, the color of the sound changed, and I really appreciate yeah. So I really like the color of the sound now. I liked it before, but it's still beautiful now. But what I have experienced more than anything is, I have to retrain myself how to have breath support, because I was carrying around. So I lost 164 pounds. So I was carrying around. So I actually lost 100. I was, I think, like 145. And my
Mhm.
therapist, when I got to that point, she's like, just so you know, you lost me. You lost the equivalent of your therapist. She
See,
weighs
that's
145 pounds.
cool.
Yeah. And so I mean, literally carrying around a human, an extra human. And so your muscles work differently, the way you hold yourself, the amount of air you now have and the energy you have. And so I am now in the midst of working out how I have so much energy. I don't know what to do with it. And so I don't know how to use it in my voice anymore. And so my voice teacher and I are working on how to extend it and how to use it properly, and so I can use all of it instead of just this much of it now and that kind of stuff. So I do have some issues. Hopefully that will be resolved when I have plastic surgery and have my muscles put back into place from carrying all of my weight in my stomach and carrying babies. So yes, it did change, but not in the way I thought it was going to be, and in such a better and beautiful way, I think.
I love that because we don't think about it. Like you literally have fat everywhere. You're gonna have fat around your diaphragm, in your throat, and everything like that. I just when you told me about the whole opera thing, I had like a million questions. But that was one of my questions. Is I don't know. I felt like my voice, just my speaking voice, kind of changed a little bit because I lost like 165, 64 pounds or something like that. And there's fat around your neck. And then I feel like it does make a difference. It might not be like this, it's not like you're a 12-year-old boy and your voice like drops and like just changes, but there's like subtle little changes. And there was a time when we were that heavy, just something simple as walking to the couch, like you're exerting a lot more energy and you're breathing heavier. And
Mhm.
you spent your whole life training, because like when you sing opera, like you have to have incredible control and range, and the way that you train your breath, I'm assuming that when all of a sudden those simple breaths are easier to take naturally, it's like you almost have to like retrain yourself all over again.
Yeah. Yeah, it is an absolute retrain. I've retrained so many things. Yeah, and it's because I just have so much more now.
Yeah.
I don't know how to handle it. I don't know how to control it. And there's an element of just letting it go and letting it be. And now I have to let go of I just have to give it control. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. It's teaching me a lot. But yeah, absolutely.
I love it. So what was the first performance post-op like?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so that picture for the
Oh, used
uh,
for the event?
yeah, so that was one of my very first operas on the left side here in Albuquerque, and then that other one was my very first back. And it was incredible because it was not only my first back post-op, but it was also the first back after pandemic. So it was the first time that we had to wear masks backstage, but we took them off to sing on stage. And I kid you not, every single person in my cast cried every single night because it was this moment of community again, and all, like, everything from the pandemic. You can imagine that because we've all been through it. But
Yeah.
then to now have this stamina to sing on stage, and that dress that I'm in weighs 45 pounds. So it's heavy. Because I mean, it's a corset and it's layers upon layers, and it was absolutely incredible to go through an entire production and then walk away going, I could do this again right now. Like, I could get back on stage and do it again and not feel horribly fatigued. So in my second opera, right after that, our stage director had us literally running circles. We'd exit stage left and then we'd run around and enter from stage right. And I am not a runner. I have asthma. And every night, I literally ran 10 miles every single night, running circles on stage. And there was a moment where I was literally running down the hallway, and I had never experienced this, but my body actually went faster than my feet, and I almost fell. Like, my dresser was actually passing me, and she caught me because I was running faster than my body could take, because I actually had the energy to do it. I'm like, where is this? And so I have a really good friend of mine who runs like half Ironmans, and she's like, you got to come run with me. I'm like, no, no, thank you. I'll just run this circle. But yeah, it was incredible. It was the best feeling I've ever felt.
Like legit, you seriously gave me goosebumps talking about it, because there's something about just being live. Like I used to do theater and stuff, and there's something that when you're being around these people and you feel the energy, like the give and take from the audience, it number one in itself is so electric.
It's
But I
amazing.
like my little hairs are like standing up because I just visualize this first performance after like a year and a half, 2 years, where the whole world was unknown. You're so cast aside from everybody. There's no connection there. there was no electricity anymore. All of our communication was text messages and video chats. And then not only are you being reborn in like post pandemic potential, but you're like in this new version of yourself. You're in this new version of yourself. You're in this new version of your city and your environment, like the whole world. Like I cannot even fathom the electricity that you feel in that moment. Like I would literally, I'm not a crier. I would be in tears because I would just feel it so hard.
All the time. Okay, so I have to tell you this quick story. When I got married, I was when I got married, I was 180 pounds and I was a size 16 dress. And I picked out my wedding dress. No one helped me. My mom was working that day, so she came late. I picked out this beautiful dress and I went in the next day to have it altered or do alterations. And the alterations lady was so rude to me. She's like, I would never have picked this dress for you. It doesn't fit your body. It makes you look bigger than you are. And da da da. And of course, I'm already thinking,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, it was horrible. So every time I go to an opera, it's like this moment where I try and recreate this moment because you have a dresser and you have private dressers that help you. And the bigger I got, the harder it was. So when I came and did this first opera back and I wore this gorgeous dress with a corset. I mean, both my dresses had corsets. I love corsets, by the way. And they're cinching me in this corset and they're like, oh, we can take it in. Like they're just continuing to go. And they're like, wow, what's going on? This is great. And I remember I put that black one on. It's my favorite. And the dresser turned back and she goes, damn girl, you look good. And I was like, everything flooded back from my wedding dress. And I'm like, I can now put that to rest. I can put that aside. It's no longer important. It's not something I have to resolve anymore. And it was just this amazing moment of every time I put on a new dress or something. And my last opera that we did, I had 6 quick changes and a new dress every time. And it was just, and everyone, oh, Holly, you look so good. And it was the biggest ego boost. And it healed so many things for me in that moment. It was incredible. So yeah.
I absolutely love that. I am so bummed that we are out of time.
I know.
So a couple things are going to happen because we're just going to assume that Holly's coming back at another time. One, I want Holly to come back in August so we can celebrate her surgiversary and we can find like something to do to celebrate together. 2, if you guys think that Holly needs to give me an opera lesson, maybe we'll do a show about it. I don't know. I don't want to hurt people's eardrums or anything like that. So maybe we'll record it another time. But if any of you guys have questions for Holly or want to reach out to her or tell her, that she's as amazing as I think she is, send us comments. Make sure that you spread the word. And before we go, like Holly, first and foremost, thank you so much for being a part of this today. Like your story is just so amazing. And I'm so honored and humbled that you took time out of your day just to come and hang out with me for an hour.
Oh, truly was my pleasure. I think what you're doing is incredible. Like I can't stop talking about you. So I'm so excited to be a part of this. So thank you.
My absolute pleasure. I'm just so glad that we're giving voices to more and more people and letting them share their stories. Other than that, like I just the way that we ended it, just with that dress alone is like the perfect way to end it. But is there anything, you have the floor, so is there anything that you want to add or anything before we go? And Catherine gave us a comment and says that she loves you, Holly girl.
I love her. She's the one I was telling you about. You're going to love her.
Oh.
She's great. Yeah. She's, I just think the thing, if I could say anything, is you are worth this. Whoever is deciding to do it, and no matter where you are in your journey, whether you're 2 years out or 15 years out, whether there's been regain and loss, or you haven't regained, or you haven't lost as much as you thought you have, or you wanted to, there's just so much about this journey. It's not over in a year. It's not over in 6 months. It's not over at a certain, weight loss at 100 pounds or whatnot. And every step, we are worth this. We are worth a beautiful life. We are worth a happier life. There's no one has the right to tell us that we can't be happy. And that is for anybody in any journey, not only weight loss. And there's nothing wrong with weight loss surgery. I honestly believe it is a beautiful gift from God that those people who are blessed to have it, truly are blessed to have it. So if you're sitting on the fence and you're wanting to do it and thinking about it, do it. It will change your life for the better.
Absolutely love that. And I think that is the perfect way to end the show because, Holly, you are so worth it. And to you guys watching at home, you are so worth it. That's some of the best advice we could be given is you deserve to be happy. You are worthy of having good things happen to you. So on that note, as far as the show, please spread the word, tell your friends about it. If you know people who've had this surgery and want to share their story, we want to talk to you. As we were blindsided at the beginning of this episode, there is no topic that is off limits. We will address anything and everything that you want to share in the hopes that it's going to help somebody or resonate with somebody who's dealing with the same thing. So on that note, I hope you guys all have an amazing Wednesday, a kick-ass week, and we were actually going to see you guys again on Friday because we have another special guest on Friday this week. So on that note, it's been a pleasure.
You're the best.